Dropsy is the person all of us want to be, but none of us can. He is a special clown. Dropsy is our savior. I'm talking about Dropsy. Developed by Tendershoot, aka J. Tholen, Dropsy is a crowd-funded 2015 video game that suffered the misfortune of coming out the same week as Undertale.
Oh, hello. My name is Jay, and I am here enjoying one of my favorite pastimes, peanut butter and jelly.
Dropsy is a point-and-click adventure game, or point-and-click hug-venture as it bills itself. No longer a genre that pulls huge audiences, so it might have been overshadowed anyway. Still, if not for the release date, I think Dropsy might have gained more of a following. The player character is, of course, Dropsy the Clown. Dropsy is a grotesque play on the monster clown trope, an obese, sweaty, illiterate man with beady yellow eyes and a gaping jaw with several off-color teeth. His arms end in handless nubs. He's named after a disease involving bloating. Dropsy lives on an island whose residents regard him with fear and disgust, not only because of his unusual appearance. They blame him for setting a circus tent on fire, killing several people, including a beloved preacher and the store owner's wife. After he awakens from a nightmare, Dropsy and his dog travel to town to bring his mother a flower and a dirty sock, respectively. But the player soon learns they're traveling to the graveyard. His mother died in the fire too. Although the people of the island hate him at worst and find him unpleasant at best, Dropsy shows them all completely unwarranted and unconditional affection. His goal is to make people happy. He's a clown, after all. The most important command in the option menu is hug, as if Dropsy's instant reaction to others is to hug them. He wants nothing else.
Dropsy is that clown that the folks around town are wrong about, and he cares for them all anyway. With his signature smile and warm, damp, loving embrace.
And so, piece by piece, Dropsy shows the people of the island that he would never murder anyone, much less his mother, and generally makes everyone happier, while embarking on a personal journey in search of his origins and answers to why the world is full of suffering. Dropsy is an excellently designed point-and-click adventure game, modeled on the wacky exemplars of the genre from the late 80s and early 90s. Unusually for the genre, though, Dropsy features a complete open world with a day-night cycle that affects characters' locations, what they're doing, and where Dropsy can walk. From the beginning, the player is able to explore almost the entire island, drinking in the lovely, colorful graphics, equal parts funny and beautiful, though the degree of pixelation may put some people off, all set to Chris Schlarbe's jazzy soundtrack born in one 12-hour recording session. The puzzles, with a single exception, are understandable and logical for the world. At least I thought so. It's incredibly heartwarming. Some details are great, like how Dropsy can look at these tables and see that the security guard posted there has been reading trashy romance novels. In most Western adventure games, exploration of environment and inventory are the primary focus. That's true of Dropsy too, but the security guard's interest in romance novels has no connection to any puzzle or the plot. She's only a minor character, fleshing out the world with little human details, a much more meaningful reward for exploration than a gag or an item to solve a puzzle. But, as the trailer states, Dropsy has secrets even he doesn't know about. The player explores an overarching science fiction mystery involving Dropsy, 3 strange sets of pillars, and the company that rules the island. Tholen released Dropsy in the Black Lodge, a short, slightly Twin Peaks-themed horror adventure, as promotion for the main game. It is not totally unrepresentative. Dropsy's journey takes him dark places. In the rest of this video, I'll explain my interpretation of the events depicted in Dropsy and their significance. Since it's one of my favorite video games of all time, I strongly recommend you play through it first. This experience should not be missed. Spoiler warning over. One of the many striking features of Dropsy is the lack of text. Dialogue and even the menu are navigated solely with pictures. This makes the video game more universal, as there's not a language barrier, and also helps put us in Dropsy's mental space. He doesn't seem to know how to read, speak, or understand language, yet he can communicate with everyone, including animals. Impressively, the system of images used to convey meaning usually succeeds, but occasionally it can be difficult to understand. Because of this lack of text, there is even more room than usual in a work of art to interpret most details differently. This is my reading. After Dropsy's father becomes bedridden and the S Company catches Dropsy stealing medicine, the company's CEO seemingly has a change of heart and hires Dropsy to perform at the circus he's building. However, Dropsy finds signs that the CEO may not be a good man. Of course, he keeps lethally armed death robots programmed to carry out extrajudicial executions on the spot, but he also has unchecked control of the island. The player sees no indication of any island government, only the S Company. The CEO has authority to close off sections of the island, and even the policeman seems to work for him. Off the coast of the main island exists a smaller island. In a village here lives a community of counterculture figures. A bootlegger, a rock band, and a religious group worshipping a Thor-like being who apparently saved the people from a vampire. In the desert slumbers an abandoned mine closed off to the public. The activist in the downtown area tells Dropsy that the mine belonged to the S Company. Notably, this activist is one of the few people who doesn't initially dislike Dropsy. When Dropsy breaks into the mine to rescue his dog, he discovers a mass human grave, and more human bodies left inside the tunnels. Also a grim sign is the laser mounted to kill anyone who stepped through a door that would let them see the crystals mined here. These purple crystals seem to be the same eaten by the aliens stranded in the petrified forest near one of the sets of pillars. This is the first sign that the S Company is interested in aliens. The CEO himself can be found out at night, scanning the pillars in the desert with a strange machine. The activist and most of the adherents of the Vampire Slayer religion look similar. Brown skin, blue eyes. This could imply that they're part of the same family, particularly because the activist and the hermit are brothers. But I interpret it to mean they're part of the same ethnic minority, presumably the island's native people. As Dropsy learns from the activist and the pages of the village's holy book, the S Company brutally exploited the islanders for labor, paying them a mere pittance. This cartoon depicts a devil forcing the miners to work at gunpoint. While we can safely say the mine boss wasn't literally a devil, given the mass graves, this might not be an exaggeration. The evil vampire of the village's religion represents the S Company. Some movie posters around the island suggest that the vampire and Thor are characters from some kind of movie franchise. The islanders seized on this imagery because the company sapped their life like a vampire, and perhaps they identified Thor's hammer with their manual labor or something. The symbol of the counterculture village is a raised fist holding a pendant. It resembles the raised fist associated with socialist workers' movements. Presumably, the islanders had some kind of uprising against the S Company. That would be why the mine is closed, and it explains the mass graves and why these people now live away from the developed part of the island built around the S Company's headquarters. The religion was a fundamental piece of the islanders' uprising. Dropsy discovers pages of its holy book in the mine because they were presumably distributed there as subversive pamphlets. Something that could have benefited Dropsy would have been the inclusion of a genuinely complex moral choice, as some people genuinely can't both have what they want. The bodybuilding beat cop in the CEO's employ wants to catch the criminal, and the criminal needs to feed his family by selling bootlegs. A fuller narrative might show the player that the cop, in doing what he believes is the right thing, will hurt someone doing what they think is the right thing, or, in any case, their only choice. The situation could be thought-provoking. Instead, Dropsy buys a bootleg game and gives it to the cop, who tells Dropsy to show him where he got it. When we're about to see what happens next, the game cuts to black and returns to the cop who likes Dropsy now. The criminal is unaffected. What? This subplot is an inconclusive failure, but the game overall sides with the poor folks of the island. But Dropsy also goes out of its way to show that not everyone associated with the S Company is bad. The plot is essentially how Dropsy himself gets a job working for them, and from the start he eats and enjoys the company's snack cakes. The nurse who works for the company, although greedy, sincerely takes care of Dropsy's severely ill father. The security guard at the mine and the airplane crash site is testy, out of shape, and lonely. However, Dropsy repairs her scooter. This act means a lot to someone who's usually alone and despised. Tholen shows us that despite the S Company's evil, many decent people work for it and use its products. When it is so ubiquitous, no reasonable alternative exists. In the shocking finale, the player's doubts about the CEO of the S Company are revealed to be completely justified. He is the only explicitly evil character in the video game. With his company's experimental drugs and biotechnology, the CEO has transformed Dropsy's animal friends into monsters, intending them to kill Dropsy before an audience primed to celebrate the death of the hated murderer. He wanted Dropsy's innocent animal friends to kill him from sheer sadism. Instead, the animals remember Dropsy and play with him. The people of the island, who have come to love Dropsy, love seeing him happy too. The CEO is horrified. He shoots Dropsy's dog friend, sending the animals rampaging across the island. They kill many people. We can see blood spilling from smashed cars. Already, the media reports that this is Dropsy's doing, and the police are pursuing him. In one of the most beautiful sequences I've seen in a game, the many people Dropsy has helped distract the police and tell him where the CEO has fled. The people stick up for what they know is right against the authorities who have failed them, even as the news throws new slander on Dropsy. But Dropsy keeps smiling and walking at a leisurely pace. It's not clear he even understands the nightmare unfolding. The day before the betrayal, Dropsy's father decides it's time to tell his son the truth. Dropsy is a space alien. He landed on the island at one of the 3 sets of 3 columns, or perhaps the columns are the vehicle that carried Dropsy's cradle. Dropsy's parents adopted him, Superman style. The other 2 sites with 3 pillars are the locations where Dropsy's 2 brothers landed on Earth. Like him, they have yellow eyes and no fingers. One of them is the CEO. To hide his yellow eyes, the CEO wears sunglasses, and to hide his lack of hands, he wears gloves that presumably contain some kind of mechanical prosthesis. Dropsy and his brothers are the princes of an alien kingdom, and so the CEO, presumably the youngest, murdered his brother and foster father to steal the throne. It was the CEO that poured the gasoline and dropped the cigar to ignite the circus tent, intending to kill Dropsy too. When that failed, he used his control of the island's media to smear Dropsy's reputation instead. Dropsy learns all this when he finds newspaper clippings about the circus fire in a secret bunker beneath the CEO's former home. Also the severed heads of his other brother and uncle. One of Dropsy's assets as a game, its lack of language, actually rings hollow. There is text. The strange words that turn up on signs and emails are actually English, written in an alphabet of Tholen's invention. This undercuts the notion that Dropsy is free of language, although understanding most of the text in the game is unnecessary. The graffiti on Dropsy's home explicitly calls him a murderer, but the player gets the gist of it from the artwork and context. But inside the abandoned house of the CEO's family is a letter inviting his father and brother to the cellar for a Christmas surprise. That's why a deflated snowman and other Christmas decorations lay around and inside the house. The CEO murdered his family in the cellar on Christmas Day. The CEO has fled to the 3 pillars he investigated earlier to open a portal to another world. Through the portal, Dropsy finds levitating trees like those in the petrified forest, which must have come from this place. The CEO kneels in defeat before what is presumably a statue of his and Dropsy's father. Although the CEO has so much blood on his hands and has been unforgivably cruel towards him, Dropsy shows everyone unwarranted and unconditional affection. The only option the player has, the only option that occurs to Dropsy, is to give the pathetic CEO a hug. Instead, the CEO shoots Dropsy, who falls over and bleeds out. Then a white light shines, and Dropsy awakens aboard an alien spaceship, healed and good as new, where he reunites with his animal friends, father and mother, all alive and well, to claim the kingdom's empty throne. Dropsy hugs his mother. The credits roll as the circus tent-shaped spaceship glides through the cosmos. This can be taken at face value. His people saved Dropsy and used their space-age technology to restore him, his friends, and family to normal. Or we can interpret it as Dropsy's afterlife, or his dying delirium. Given that the CEO clearly reacts to the white light, though, it seems reasonable to believe that the aliens are somehow beaming him up, or perhaps landing nearby. Dropsy the game is like a folktale. Dropsy the clown is a Christ figure. These are common in pop culture because the character type has broad appeal, although not are all so successful. The story posits Dropsy as a contemporary Jesus, a poor man born in unusual circumstances who shows unconditional love and forgives everyone for their sins. The cruel ruling system's attempt to kill him results in the deaths of many innocents, including 2 on Christmas Day, the symbolic birthday of the real Jesus, and for standing up against it, he is subjected to brutal public humiliation and unjustly murdered. Then he rises from the dead in bright light to inherit his father's kingdom in the sky. Tholen accomplishes this without religious iconography through characterization and plotting. No need to strike a cross pose. It's interesting that the CEO is Dropsy's brother. The good and evil brother story goes back to the dawn of history. Here it suggests that good and evil are equally possible outcomes for people, and are not in the blood, so to speak. If Dropsy had to have a villain, Tholen chose the correct target, the powerful capitalist, even if the CEO is perhaps too straightforwardly evil. In accordance with the profit motive consequences be damned, the modern Pontius Pilate is a sociopath, pursuing only his self-interest to the extent of murdering his brothers and foster father. Further, the CEO engaged in the brutal exploitation of the island's native people for material gain. The character represents capitalist exploitation generally, but maybe also colonial brutality. And a poor country falling under a foreign company's control has come to pass all too often. The game doesn't tell us that the island's situation will improve if only the CEO were a nicer man. The system itself atomizes people, drives them to greed, and rewards ghouls like Dropsy's brother. It is why so many people Dropsy meets are sad and lonely. The mediator between the head and the hands will not be the heart. The division between head and hands precludes the heart. One of the characters associated with the S Company is the King of the Junkyard, the most negative character besides the CEO. He screams at Dropsy's father at length for not bringing enough cash to pay him back for motorcycle parts. Dropsy's father is a sick old man with a limp whose wife recently died, but the king cares only about himself. This verbal abuse seems to be the trigger for the severe decline in the father's health. The king lets Dropsy hug him only after he provides ingredients for a soup. The king is a man who responds only to his appetites. Perhaps if Dropsy just paid him the money, the result would have been the same. In his shanty, the king keeps a copy of Atlas Shrugged, so absurd selfishness should not be surprising, nor should his position as a king of nothing but junk. Because despite the crown, the king is basically homeless. the S Company is exploiting him, too. A philosophy of selfishness will ultimately benefit not a man like this would-be king, but only those already in power. Although a point-and-click hug venture, Dropsy is not saccharine. The characters are expressive and ugly, combined with the open world and the day-night cycle, and tholen's willingness to show relatable, realistic grit, urination, cigarettes, grime. No matter how weird it gets, Dropsy feels real. If Dropsy frequently helps people with simple material objects, that reflects the material world he lives in. And with objects, he reunites brothers, gives a fundamentalist preacher a new, kinder perspective on life, and makes a little girl believe in miracles. Maybe Dropsy is oversimplified, but it is deeply affecting, or was for me. Traveling through a world where I did and wanted nothing more than to make people happy primed me to feel that way in real life. I wondered why I didn't show more kindness and compassion to those around me, even when so many of them, like with Dropsy, have done nothing to warrant it. Dropsy, like Jesus, is a model, an unreachable ideal nonetheless worth imitating. I literally keep a picture of Dropsy above my bed to remind myself, hey, today, you can do the right thing. Tholen's Twitter remarks, if a person does stuff you disagree with, being kind to them may be a better way to help them change than being mean to them. Is that naive? Not all of us have got aliens to beam us into their spaceship after bad people gun us down. But the sentiment is admirable. We need more video games that reward kindness instead of kills. Some people are like the S Company CEO and will never change for the better. But some folks, probably most, are decent, but get blue or tricked and end up lost down winding roads. And maybe what some of those people could use to get them started towards someplace better is a warm hug. That's the video.